Hey folks, it's Greg and Janet with Strange RV Tours. Today we're in Dealey Plaza and we're going to be discussing some of the witnesses that were here the day that Kennedy was assassinated and what they saw. Join us. Okay guys, we're standing where Mr. Charles Bren was standing with his 5-year-old son. He was standing beside Mary Mormon and Jean Hill. This X in the road right here was where the fatal shot hit President Kennedy. And Mr. Bren said he heard 3 shots. The first shot and the second shot were both hits. The third shot he heard after the fatal hit, or after the fatal headshot to the president. That's the grassy knoll in front of us over here. Texas School Depository is right up here. And I guess he and Mary Mormon were probably the closest people to the president other than the people actually in the vehicle when the fatal shot occurred. Mary Mormon actually took a photograph of the exact moment the president was hit in the head from this location. What do you think, girl?
I mean, to be a witness to such a tragic event like that, I mean, I'm sure everybody's like dumbfounded. I mean, the shock of it to start with, and then the aftermath. I know everybody was dropping to the ground, and people were crying and screaming and stuff.
And then there was a mass exodus going up the grassy knoll where people thought that the shots came from.
Yeah, you can see footage of people running and stuff.
Well, we're walking across the street here. This window right up here is the 6th floor corner where Oswald supposedly made his infamous shot. Alright guys, this is the infamous pedestal or abutment that Abraham Zapruder was standing on when he filmed the assassination on his 8mm camera. Immediately after filming the assassination of President Kennedy, Abraham Zapruder got down off of the pedestal, started walking back towards his office, which is over in the Daltex building here. And along the way, he was stopped by a reporter. The reporter asked him what he had seen or what he had heard. And he said he was filming the assassination and he heard gunshot out of his right ear, which would be on this side over here. School book depository is on this side. The picket fence is over here behind me on this side, out of my right ear. Now, Zapruder said he didn't believe that the gunfire came from the grassy knoll, which is, this is the grassy knoll here. But he said he did hear the gunfire out of his right ear. So I believe he probably heard something on the other side of the picket fence, which makes sense. So that was Mr. Zapruder's statement. Okay, now Mr. Emmett Hudson was standing approximately where Janet is standing now on the staircase going up to the top of the grassy knoll on the picket fence. Now, while he was standing here, he claims that he heard gunshots from behind him and above him, which would be back over here. That point over there makes sense to me. Most people think that the shot may have come from over here. I think it may have come from over there. And we'll tell you why. Okay, now we made our way up the stairs to the picket fence. This is the parking lot that is beyond the picket fence. This is the back side of the picket fence right over here. Now most people assume that the shot was probably taken right along in here, the front shot, the head shot. The X on the road is right down here. This would have been a very good location, except if anybody was walking up that staircase, they would have gotten hit. So I don't think this was probably the location. Deputy W.W. Mabra encountered a uniformed police officer right back here in the rail yard parking lot. That man claimed he was stationed here. A police officer stationed here. The officer told him that no one had come this way. That police officer's never been identified. Nobody knows who he was. No man matching his description was on the police force that day in Dealey Plaza. So that's a little unusual. 35 minutes before the motorcade was due to arrive in Dealey Plaza, they locked down this parking lot. And this parking lot was basically full at the time, jam-packed. There was not supposed to be any car movement in the parking lot at that time. A Mr. Lee Bowers, who was working in this two-story interlocking tower, witnessed 3 cars moving after the parking lot had been locked down. The first one was a 1959 Oldsmobile that was blue and white. The second car he saw at 12:20, he saw a 1957 Ford with the driver talking into a microphone or telephone in the car, which would have been highly unusual in 1963 if it had been a telephone. And third, he saw a 1961 Chevy Impala stop behind the fence, which would have been the picket fence over here. Now, when the assassination occurred, Mr. Bowers said that he saw a flash of light or a puff of smoke coming from the picket fence area. Now, I think it would be more easily for him to see that on the flat part facing the road rather than the side that's perpendicular, where everybody has always thought that the shooter may have been. From his vantage point, it would have been much easier for him to see the puff of smoke on this large flat wall. So let's go check out the triple overpass. Now, Mr. Lee Bowers stated that he heard 3 shots. He heard a first shot with a pause, and then a second shot, and a third shot almost immediately after the second shot, which aligns with what some of the other witnesses were saying that day. I'm standing on the triple overpass, the byway, where you could walk across it. And the day of the assassination, there was 3 railroad workers that had parked over in this parking lot and were making their way over to their job. And when they got to this point here, they started hearing the gunshots. And they noticed right over in this area, not on the front of the picket fence, but on the side, this long side here, they noticed a puff of smoke coming billowing from the tree line. Now, these trees were much smaller back then. In fact, if you see the footage from that day, you wouldn't even recognize these trees. They were so small. But that's where they saw the puff of smoke. That's also where Lee Bowers probably saw the puff of smoke from where he was. Now we'll walk over to that area. Okay, now we're standing approximately where the puff of smoke occurred. And this spot is really intriguing to me because right here is where the fatal shot hit the president. He's got whoever was standing here would have had a really good shot at the president from this location. Not only that, but if you look at this picket fence, if you had a rifle, you could easily put the rifle between yourself and the fence and just lean against it. Nobody would see it. And most people, almost everybody here that was here that day for the motorcade, was either standing in the center where the grass is over here or along this side of Elm Street along the grass. So everybody would have been looking that way while the presidential motorcade was coming down Elm Street. So you would have had a fairly decent chance of getting away without being seen if you were firing from here. Not only that, if you did make a shot from here and you just happened to park your car right here and had the trunk open, you could have dropped the weapon into your trunk, closed it, got in the passenger seat while your driver left the scene of the crime with you in the car. So this is a very intriguing spot. But most people think that the shot had to come up from over here. I don't think that's where it came from, if there was a shot taken from the front. A Mr. Wilford Bates heard a shot and ran up the grassy knoll towards the railroad tracks and was stopped by an unknown police officer. The police officer pointed a pistol at him and shouted, "Where are you going?" Bates retreated and went back down the slope. I would have too if I had a gun pointed at me.
Yeah.
Then there was Officer Joe M. Smith, who ran to the parking lot where we're at now. And he was stopped by a man who identified himself as a Secret Service agent. He looked like an auto mechanic with dirty fingernails and was wearing a sports shirt and pants.
Oh.
Now, this one is confusing to me. If I'm a trained police officer and I know what a Secret Service agent is supposed to look like, and a man with dirty fingernails and not wearing proper attire were to tell me he was a Secret Service agent, I think I would have stopped him and questioned him a little bit more. So why he didn't, who knows? There was a lot of havoc that day. A Mr. Malcolm Summers ran up towards the grassy knoll, where he said he was stopped by a man in a suit who had an overcoat over his arm. I saw the gun under the overcoat. The man said, "Don't come up any further, you could get shot or killed." Now, I've seen a photograph of this man online, and it appears to me that he was standing right in this area, right where Jan is standing here. And he had an overcoat over his right arm, and it did look like he may have something underneath that overcoat. He's an older gentleman, looked like an investigator. So that's unusual that he would have been here this fast. Now, one thing that I haven't even mentioned to you guys yet is that there was Secret Service in the motorcade, but there was no Secret Service that day that was stationed in Dealey Plaza. If there was, there's no way the 6th floor window of the Texas School Book Depository would have been open. That is completely against Secret Service rules. And on the 5th floor, there was 3 windows that were open that had 3 gentlemen standing or sitting in the windows looking out over Dealey Plaza at the motorcade. So there was a lot of unusual things that happened that day. There wasn't the normal protocol. Along with that, you would have never had the president in a convertible vehicle. Now, an officer by the name of Charles Blankenship ran to the grassy knoll and encountered 2 men in suits who stated that they were Secret Service agents. They told him he could not go any further, and he turned around and left Dealey Plaza. Hard to believe that a police officer in the middle of his investigation would just take 2 guys' word for it that they were Secret Service without seeing any identification, and turn around and not only leave the grassy knoll, but leave the plaza. Okay, this is the Texas School Book Depository, and the original front entrance was right over here. That's Elm right here where the president was assassinated. And we're going to walk back behind the School Book Depository because an officer, D.V. Harkness, went to the rear of the School Book Depository and encountered several well-armed men in suits. They told him they were Secret Service. But guess what? The Secret Service didn't have anybody stationed in Dealey Plaza that day. So there was people running around here. It sounds like a bunch of people running around here claiming to be Secret Service agents that were not Secret Service. But it was in this area here that police officer Harkness came across 2 men claiming to be Secret Service agents. Okay, now there's a highly decorated officer here in Dallas by the name of Roger Craig, who just a year or 2 before the assassination had won Police Officer of the Year. He claims that when he arrived on the scene here in Dealey Plaza, that he heard a loud whistle, a screeching whistle, and he saw Lee Harvey Oswald leave from this corner of Texas School Book Depository, running this way, running down the grassy knoll where a station wagon had stopped. I guess it would have been down in this area. And he got into that station wagon. There was a man driving, and the station wagon drove off. Now, this wasn't an ordinary police officer. This was a highly decorated Police Officer of the Year that witnessed this. Ruth Payne did own a station wagon. So the narrative of how Lee Harvey Oswald left from Dealey Plaza officially is that I believe he went down this way to a Greyhound bus station. He got on a bus, went a block and a half, and the traffic was bad. He got off of that bus, got into a cab, and took a cab back to his rooming house. This is totally different. To me, this is more believable coming from a highly decorated police officer. So I don't know. There's a lot of misinformation having to do with this assassination, and the more you dig into it, the more information you find, and most of it leads nowhere. Okay, the last two witnesses that I'm going to talk about today here were two high school students, a Mr. Billy Jones and Ronnie Witherspoon. They witnessed an arrest on I-45 in Ferris, which is just south of Dallas. It's about probably 20 minutes from here. And they witnessed an arrest happen. The police stopped a black car with 3 men inside. The two high school kids were allowed to drive on. Local police said that they saw Secret Service credentials and that they had been told they were on their way to New Orleans to investigate something related to the assassination. Now, later, the Secret Service admitted that they did not know these men in this car. So, like I said, there's all kinds of sightings, all kinds of people pulled over, but nobody wants to actually fess up to anything. Who was the authorities? Plenty of witnesses saying what they saw. All kinds of witnesses.
Strange RV tours will take you places with Greg and Janet's smiling faces. You might see a crazy flavored soda review or some tips to fix your RV too. So come along, won't you join us, friend, as we discover what's around the bend. Just sit right back in your easy chair. Strange RV Tours is on the air. Strange RV Tours is on